It's no secret that the grand races are one of the most popular things to do in the Crew Motorfest, but I know it's a little bit of a love-hate relationship for a lot of players. The pure chaos that ensues at the start of the race can get you frustrated, and trust me, I'm no exception. Getting to the front, or at least near the front at the beginning of the race, is crucial if you're trying to avoid the pileups in the corners, so having the fastest cars just makes the grand races that much more fun. So let's talk about what the fastest cars are for each of the vehicle types. Let's go! Real quick before I get into the video, if you're looking for a community of racers to play with, join our Discord. There's a link in the description down below. That's also where I do all of my giveaways, and we have every topic in there from the Crew Motorfest, the Crew 2, to Need for Speed Heat, Need for Speed Unbound, everything Need for Speed, and all kinds of other racing games. There's over 14,000 members there, so hit that link and join us. All right, let's get into this. All right, so in this video, I'm gonna show you what the meta car is, the car that seems to be doing the best for the most number of people right now in September, which is the month that this game has come out. Now, I will update this meta list as we go on and as things change, as the game gets updated, as new cars get added. However, for right now, this is my best analysis. I've been sitting on this video for about a week. So I've got for you the best car, and then I've got for you a few alternatives for each of the classes, if there are any. And those alternatives are really just competitive, but they're probably not the best. And they're definitely vehicles that I like to drive. They're my favorites. So if you have your own favorites in each of these classes, please put it in the comments, because you can help the community by doing that. All right. Here we go. Let's start with Street 1. So the number one car right now in Street 1 is the 2016 Focus RS. It handles very, very well. However, it's a little bit slippy and kind of hard to drive, but that's kind of the nature of Street 1 in general, because the Street 1 cars are just not as upgraded as your Street 2 or the racing or the hypercars. So you're going to naturally have a lot of slippage in this area. But the car is super fast. It's very good for acceleration through basically the entire gear range. It's a car that I highly recommend you get. If you don't want to have that one, or you don't like the way it handles, the RX-7 is a very fast car. Again, doesn't handle quite as well as the Focus, but it's very, very good, and it's nice to customize. It's an older FC chassis, so it's just one of the most beautiful looking cars out there, and it drives very nice. And then sort of a sleeper build is the Grand Cherokee. The Grand Cherokee in Street 1 is way underrated. A lot of people don't use it, and I love it because it actually is fast in a straight line. It doesn't corner very well, but it takes curbs and bumps like nobody else. It really does well in some of the tighter street courses where you have to do a lot of cuts and corners and a lot of going through bushes and over curbs. So that's another alternative for you. Moving on to Street 2. Now there's a ton of cars in Street 2, but the one car, now there's probably two cars that are very, very similar in speed, even though they handle completely different, and that's the Corvette ZR1 and the Huracan. Both of those cars are very, very good for this class, and it's hard to tell from my point of view which one is better. The Corvette is a little bit of a slower shifter, not as many gears. The Huracan is more of a high octane, high RPMs, a lot of quickness. I'm not really sure which one does better overall, but they're both very, very strong, so you can choose one of those. Now, as far as alternatives for Street 2, there's probably a million of them, because Street 2 seems to have the most diversity in terms of which cars are doing well for which players. But basically, I have three for you. I really like the F12 Berlinetta. This Ferrari actually handles very, very well, and it's super stable, like right out of the box. No pro settings, it just feels really nice to drive, so I highly recommend that one. Now the F40 also feels nice to drive, and it does pretty well. I don't know that it's as strong as the F12, but it's pretty close. And then lastly, I've got the Diablo. Diablo is just like a powerhouse. It has a lot of power, and it's a little bit wild, but it actually is very good to drive. It's got a lot of power, and like I said, it's fast, so it's definitely something you can use in Street 2. Now moving on to the drift category, everybody hates the drift, especially when drifting is set up as the first category in those grand races. But if you have to find yourself in that situation, use one of the like hypercar-ish drift cars. So the Agera R or the Lamborghini, these are the cars that you want to use. And from my personal point of view, I like the Agera R. I think it has the most traction and it feels the best throughout the corners. I actually made a video on that not too long ago. All right, there's not really any alternatives to that. Just use the hypercar style drift cars and be on your way. Now let's move on to the racing category. There's one car that just is, in my opinion, above the rest, and that's the 458 Italia GT3. That car is just insane. It has really good speed and it just keeps speed through corners. It corners really well. It doesn't slip. It's literally right out of the box one of the best cars in the game, and certainly, in my opinion, the best car in the racing category right now. If you want an alternative to this though, if you're tired of using that meta car, then you go to the FXXK or the Bolide. I like both of those cars. However, the Bolide just really doesn't handle as well as the FXXK. However, the Bolide has a lot of speed, man, a lot. I mean, it is really, really fast. It's good for slipstream. It's good for straightaways. It just doesn't handle as well as the FXX. The FXX has really, really solid handling, especially if you throw a good Pro Tune on it. So those are my racing cars, and let's move on to the hypercars. Now hypercars are great. There's a few of them that are really good, and I'm going to give you 3 that I think are worthy of being on the list, and that is the Cento, let me see if I can get this right, Cento, oh nope, didn't get it right, Cento Dieci. Oh man, hopefully I got that right. Anyway, the Cento Dieci is the #1 hypercar. From my point of view, I think it wins more races than anything I've ever seen, and it really doesn't have a true competitor. Now, the Jesco is super fast, so you can use the Jesco if you'd like, but the Jesco is just a little bit hard to handle, and for most players, I think you would be better off using the Cento than the Jesco. A lot of O's on this one. And then the last car, if you would like to use it, is the Revuelto. Oh my goodness, these Italian names, they're tough. The oh, okay, here we go. Almost. The Revuelto is actually very fast, but it's not the best in class, and it actually handles very, very well. So give that a try if you want to. These are all expensive cars, so in my opinion, just pick the Cento and move on. Now, next up is Alpha GP. So for this one, there's really only one that I really recommend, but my editor actually has a different opinion on this. I like the Alpha Mark II, but he actually likes the RB18. Now, they handle slightly differently. The Mark II, I think, is a little bit more stable in the corners. The RB18 is a little bit more wild, and they both kind of have similar speed, so it's really up to your driving style and what you like. But personally, I'm a huge fan of the Mark II, but you can go with the RB18 if you would like, and certainly the Mark X is no slouch, so you can go with that one as well. All right, moving on to motocross. Now, the motocross is really tough because they're basically all kind of the same in terms of speed, and especially when you start out with motocross, everybody's slipstreaming and it's really hard to tell which one is better. What determines your strengths and weaknesses in the motocross category is whether or not you know the path that you're racing on, because if you know the path, then you're gonna do well. If you don't know the path, you're not gonna do well. However, personally, I think the 450 Nighthawk Edition is the best motocross bike in the game, but I don't know, I could be wrong. It's really early and I haven't done a ton of testing on this, and they all kind of feel the same, but I would recommend that one if you had to pick one. All right, moving on to Rally Raid. There's one car that I really like, and that's the BMW Z4. I use it a lot. It is very fast and it handles extremely well. It does very good in the corners. It's just overall a very solid option. Now, the Jeep Evo 2 is a good alternative. This Evo 2 is super fast and it does well in a straight line. It does very well with the grand races specifically. The grand races are mostly like rally raid. All of the off-road stuff is mostly rally raid, and the Jeep Evo 2 is built perfectly for that. It eats the water so well. I mean, it's so fast in the water. It's just really overall good, but it doesn't corner quite as well as the Z4 in my opinion. So the Z4 is like the best, and then the Jeep Evo 2 is like really, really close. And then right behind the Jeep Evo 2 is going to be the Porsche 959. That thing also does very well, but it's not quite as good as those other two. All right, moving on to the rally category. Now, the top dog, in my opinion, is the Citroen C3. It's not the fastest in every single scenario, but it is overall the best, most well-rounded rally car in the game right now. it doesn't really have a competitor, but if I had to choose one, it would be the WRC05, and that's the Mitsubishi. The Mitsubishi is maybe faster in a straight line than the C3, but the C3 handles so well that it just seems to always win for me. So I would recommend the Citroen C3 as the top meta car for you. And then if you want an alternative, the WRC05 is a very solid option. Now there's two other cars that I have to mention because they're actually really fast. Is the Ford Fiesta. I just can't put it in the meta conversation because you just don't see a lot of them. A lot of the grand races, like I said, the off-road is very rally raid, and I think the Fiesta is a true rally car. It needs dirt, fire roads, and it needs something that's a little bit less bumpy and wild. You know, it just really doesn't do well on those long sections, like when you're just flying down the volcano or like across the big field and there's huge jumps and hills and bumps. It just really it struggles in those scenarios. So I don't think the Fiesta is super good for the grand races, but it's a great rally car. It's actually really fast. And then the 911 GT3 is the same scenario except for the reverse. The 911 GT3 does really good in a straight line and just doesn't handle that well. It needs a good tune in order for it to handle even remotely close to any of these other three cars. So the 911 is like one of those maybes, like really fringy meta cars that I kind of see a few of them every once in a while, and they are pretty fast in a straight line, but they just don't handle well, and I can run circles around them with the C3. So top dog is the C3, then you've got the WRC, the Fiesta, and the 911. All right, moving into Monster Truck. Now Monster Truck is kind of weird because all of the Monster Trucks are fairly similar in speed. The difference is the handling, and the Silverado is way better. I mean, it's like not even close. It's night and day between the Silverado and literally every other monster truck. You need to get the Silverado. It just feels much better to drive. It's much more stable. It turns where you want it to. It doesn't oversteer as much. It is way better. But the key to monster truck racing is slipstreaming and using NOS at the correct times and not overusing NOS. If you're in a slipstream, there's no real reason to use NOS. You just need to make sure that you're in the slipstream. If you're not in the slipstream, you're probably going to fall off the back. So the Silverado is the one to go with. I know I'm talking a little bit of strategy here, but the Silverado, definitely, there's really not any other competitors. And then lastly, we have the planes, not a category that comes up that often, but I'm telling you 100%, the P51 Mustang is crazy fast, like absolutely insane. You have to be using it. I don't know why anyone uses anything other than the P51. It is crazy fast compared to all the other planes. So easy to keep over a 200 miles per hour top speed. You can do 215 with no NOS easily. It is ridiculous. So anyway, that is my meta cars for the Grand Race list right now in September. At the end here of September, it's the first month the game has been out, and so this is the list that I've got. I'm going to keep trying to work on this and update this as many times as I possibly can, hopefully once a month, but maybe the meta doesn't change that often, maybe every couple of months. But you'll see this video come up from time to time, and I'll just update it as much as I can. All right guys, thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions about this, please don't hesitate to ask. Send me a DM on Instagram, Twitter, or Discord. I look and read and reply to every single message that comes my way. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you on the next one. Trigger out.